One of the first things neurotypical people will think of when they hear the word autism is obsessions. And obsessions for somebody with autism can be a massive, massive source of joy and happiness in their life. It can be a way to cope with their day-to-day life, but also there are those times where it can become a real problem. Today, we are going to be doing a deep dive on autism and obsessions. Hello folks and welcome to another episode in our Parenting Autism series. My name's Kevin Chapman. My son Andy, he's 14, he has autism, and a lot of the videos on this channel look at our day-to-day life as an autism family, but on this series in particular we take a topic to do with being an autism family, take on the feedback and questions from all of you guys and do a deep dive on it and try and really drill down and find out more about that topic. If the idea of that series appeals to you, there's a link to the playlist up in the top corner for you. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on to make sure, firstly, you don't miss out on any of our future videos in this series or our daily vlogs, but also because we use the community page on this channel to announce next week's topic and collect questions for next week's episode. And if you've got your notifications turned on and you subscribe to the channel, you'll find out as soon as we post that. You can get your question in. You're more likely to be featured on the next episode. So today's video, we're going to be looking at obsessions. And obsessions is one of those areas where we do get asked about quite a lot. Like I said in the little intro there, obsessions it's one of the first things that certainly I used to associate with autism before I knew Andy, before I started to learn more and more about autism, because I guess it's the part of autism that the media shows you, even going all the way back to stuff like Rain Man. It can be seen as the autism superpower. And a lot of the time, obsessions are huge sources of joy, entertainment, pleasure. I mean, just look at Andy as an example. There's nothing he loves more than going around and looking at a church, even if he's been to that church dozens or hundreds of times before. He loves his trams. He loves his technology. He gets a huge source of pleasure from them. And he also uses those things as ways of managing the world. The reason, or one of the reasons his channel is called Through Andy's Eyes, is because for years we used to describe his 2DS and the obsession that he had with his 2DS, the little white box that he always used to carry around with him before he got a camera. But we used to describe his obsession with that as it was his way of processing the world and coping with the world around him, because he would film events in his day and then go home and obsessively watch those events over and over again until he understood them or until he worked out how he felt about them. And it was his way of coping with day-to-day life. But we've also seen how obsession can, if it goes too far or if it's an obsession with the wrong thing, can cause major problems in Andy's life. And a couple of examples we've even had in the last year or so on the channel. Around a year ago, he developed an obsession with a particular video. This is one of the most viewed videos on our channel, so it's clearly something that sort of struck a nerve of everybody. I'll link to it up in the top corner again. It's the one that I think we called it, I had to take his iPad or something along those. That was on the thumbnail. The video was called YouTube Restricted Mode Doesn't Work, because he became obsessed with this video that was just someone opening and closing the disc tray on a Sega Dreamcast. You have to be as old as me to remember a Sega Dreamcast, but it was a games console from about 25 years ago now, probably. Goodness me, I'm an old man. I had one of these when they first came out, but he was obsessed with this video where it just opens and closes the disc tray, and that's fine. We don't mind that. I gave him my Dreamcast. I let him play with the Dreamcast. He enjoyed doing that. But the problem with this obsession is this particular video that he really, really liked was absolutely chock full of swearing. And we couldn't find out a way to block it. We still every now and again now he'll go back onto that video and we'll have to remind him that he's not allowed to watch it, and it can lead to a few tears. It can lead to him falling out of his iPad for a little while. But because of his obsession with that video, it then exposed him to all of this language that we don't want to expose him to. I'm not going to get into that now about why that's a bad thing. I know from the comments on the other video that lots of people have lots of different views on whether him watching swearing is a bad idea or a good idea. We're not here to discuss that today. We don't want him exposed to swearing, and the fact that he was obsessed with that video and it was full of swearing caused problems both for him, for us as a family. yeah, it's all manner of complications, and like I say, he still goes back to that video now, which is troublesome. But also just his general obsessions with technology and routines are part of the reason why he started refusing to go to school a couple of years ago, because he became obsessed with the morning TV schedule and wanted to watch Frasier every day. And because Frasier didn't start until after he should have left for school, he saw that, he became obsessed and fixated on Frasier, and almost as if hearing that song was his victory song. If he got to hear the first bar of the Frasier theme song, he knew that he'd won. He knew that he was at home that day, and it became something he fixated on at other times as well. And obviously it's not ideal for him to become obsessed with something that is reinforcing a behaviour that we're trying to eliminate. So there's definitely the positives and the negatives of obsessions. If the interest is in the right things and it's harnessed in the right way, they can be incredibly beneficial. But it is a constant balancing act as a parent of somebody with autism. Trying to decide if an obsession is a positive or a negative one. The big debate for that is always use of technology, because Andy is obsessed with his iPad. Absolutely, he's obsessed with his iPad. But his iPad can be an incredibly beneficial education aid to him. He has learnt so much from having access to an iPad. An iPad is the main motivator that school use to get him to participate in lessons. But at the same time, all of the bad habits that he's learned, all of the things he's been exposed to that we didn't want him to be exposed to, they are all from his iPad as well. So it has so many positives, so many negatives. And even now, he's 14 and we still don't know how much we should let him use his iPad, whether we should allow him unrestricted access to it, whether we should make it something he can only use for a certain amount of time per day. It's difficult. Which is why we invite you guys to get involved with your questions, because we then get to share our thoughts on the stuff that you're most interested in, and plus it gives you an opportunity to share your experiences with us. As ever, there were loads of responses at the time of recording this video. I think we had about 90 responses to the question on the community page. It's another one of those reasons why you should be subscribed with notifications on, because then you'll get in there first. You're more likely to be upvoted. We're more likely to see you. But we've picked out the most popular ones on there, and I've had a little dig through all. I've read all of them, and any that I found interesting have made it on here as well. If your question hasn't made it onto the episode, then don't panic, try again next week. It's probably just that it was very similar to another question that I got to first. We obviously can't include 90 questions, especially when a lot of them are very, very similar, or if not similar questions, would lead to very similar answers. So let's get into your questions, and we're going to start off with the most popular question we had on our community page, which is, what would be the worst obsession that Andy has or had? And I've already touched on it a little bit, because the worst one for us was the Dreamcast video, was the swearing. And I know I said I wasn't going to get into it here, but as has been a question specifically about it, I guess we need to have a little bit more explanation about why it was such an issue for us, because I know we don't swear on our channels, and that's a conscious decision we've made because we want to be family friendly on both this channel and over on my gaming channel as well. I don't swear. I've never sworn on these channels, and I don't ever intend to, because I want to be able to position the channels as family friendly. But in real life, we are human. We do sometimes swear. We don't swear in front of the kids, apart from very, very rare occasions that we're not proud of. Everybody does occasionally, you stub your toe, things come out of your mouth, for example. But we're not completely anti-swearing. We don't use it as punctuation in our house. It's not common language in our house. I don't swear in front of my kids. I don't swear in front of my dad. My dad and my kids don't swear in front of me. We show a little bit of respect, but when we're hanging out with friends, then yeah, sometimes we swear, and we're not horrified when it happens. The issue with Andy being exposed to a video that is full of swearing is that you've seen how when he's obsessed with a video, he'll start reciting that video constantly. I've talked about it on the vlog this week, how at the moment, because one of his current obsessions is with Premier Inn, the hotel chain, he's watching a lot of their adverts on YouTube, and even when he's not watching the adverts now, you'll hear him charging around the house talking about king-size beds without the king-size prices, rooms from only £21, and just reciting stuff from the videos. And he does that with everything. When he was earlier in the week, we took him to town with his little train thing that he likes to go and film the train going up and down in lifts. That's because of an obsession he had with a YouTuber called Diesel Juicy, who takes a little train around and goes up and down in lifts. So when Andy's doing that, and it sounds like he's narrating his own videos, he's not. He's reciting videos that he's learned from this YouTuber that he's obsessed with and that he enjoys watching. So our fear, if we let him watch this video that's full of swearing, is that he'll just start reciting the swearing. And because he doesn't understand where would be appropriate and inappropriate to do that, he'd start swearing in classrooms, he'd start swearing walking around the church, he'd start swearing wandering down the street, he'd swear in front of other children, and then perhaps their parents don't want their kid to be exposed to swearing, and he wouldn't understand where's appropriate and where's not appropriate. So I know a lot of responses we had on that video way back when was, I'm 14 or I'm 13, I watch swearing on YouTube all the time, I just know when I should and shouldn't swear. Okay, that's fine. Andy doesn't know that. So that was for us, it was a really big deal. It was an obsession that we had to nip in the bud, and it's one that we're still battling regularly. He's also, and this isn't something that he's done for a long time, but he got really into watching shooting on YouTube. Not like, I mean, obviously you can't have really, like you don't get real life shooting and stuff on YouTube, but like, I don't know, Call of Duty videos or paintball videos or anything that was involving guns being fired. And again, we just didn't want him to be watching guns because our preference is that he doesn't get his enjoyment from violence and from guns. So that was something that we had to really protect him about and just stop. A lot of the bad obsessions for us are all linked back to YouTube. This is problematic considering what I do for a job, but it is generally him being exposed to things that we don't want him to become exposed to, and looking at some of the saved photographs that he has on his iPad these days. When we flick through that every now and again, as he's now a 14-year-old boy, it seems like he's in the early stages of a new obsession that I'll let you use your imagination on what that might be. But there are some photographs appearing on his iPad. Not like really, really explicit, but, you know, he's 14. I guess we need to really, really, really be monitoring what he's doing on his iPad at the moment. So, yeah, use of the internet in lots of different circumstances is something that we really had to monitor and be very careful with. My little brother's obsession is the yellow pages. He's never opened one or read one, he just physically loves holding them. He takes them everywhere with him and stims with them, tapping and flapping them above his head. They make him so happy no other book will do. They're not making them anymore come January, and we were panicking about how he'd cope. They kindly sent us 200 old copies of them, which was amazing of them. That is brilliant of them. Massive thumbs up for yellow pages. Have you ever had a situation where you couldn't get hold of or find one of Andy's obsessions? The one that immediately springs to mind is a baby's bottle. I don't even know if you'd count this as an obsession. This is more of a routine or a ritual, and I guess this is where we could potentially get lost in semantics. I think the message is still the same. We had a thing that he wanted and we couldn't get, and unfortunately for us, it led to him not drinking milk anymore. Up until probably 4 or 5 years ago, he was still drinking whole milk out of a baby's bottle every day, but it had to be a specific baby's bottle with a specific teat. There would be the ones from Wilkinson's with the fast flowing teat on them, and he was fine as long as he always had them. But then they changed them. They stopped making that particular one. We weren't able to get hold of them anymore. We tried so many different bottles from so many different shops. We even had people sending us their old versions or different versions of different bottles, and none of them would do. And ultimately he just, right, well, I'm not drinking out of it unless it's my bottle. And it meant that he just stopped drinking milk. And you've seen on the channel earlier this year that he now doesn't drink any milk at all. We even tried to get him to drink some milk out of a glass, which he can drink out of a glass. He drinks water out of a glass. That it was making him sick. Just the thought of drinking milk now makes him sick. And it all stems back to the fact that he wasn't able to get the exact bottle that he wanted anymore. And if that had happened now, then we would have probably thought to contact the company and try and get them to send some through, or we'd have mentioned it on the channel and someone would have suggested how to do this, that and the other. I know there are services out there specifically for children with autism to find them stuff that they like if it's no longer available anymore, and there are services that go out there and do all that stuff for you. But we didn't know about any of that stuff back then. We just kind of accepted it at the time that, well, we can't get these anymore. He's not going to drink milk anymore. We didn't realise it was going to be he will never drink milk again. We just thought, well, this is going to be a fun few weeks until he figures out that you can drink them out of something else, a sippy cup or something like that. But just never went back to it. It was, if it wasn't that bottle, it wasn't right. And he used to drink 6, 7, 8 bottles full of milk a day. He would really, really drink some milk because he loved doing it out of that bottle. But alas, he is not able to anymore. Have there been any obsessions that have allowed you to bond closer as parents or as a family? The big one that immediately springs to mind is Minecraft. And it's not something that he's really into anymore, but back probably 2 or 3 years ago, when it was around about the time, it might even be longer than that, it was when Minecraft was first exploding, not on PC, but when it went for its second wave of explosion and it hit iOS, so iPads, iPhones, all that kind of stuff. And Andy got it on his iPad. He already had it on it was either the PlayStation or the Xbox, I forget what it was on, it was probably on both. But the big moment where it brought us all together was when he first got it on his iPad, because the wonderful thing that you could do on the iPad is, as long as we all had it, and because we're on family share, we only had to buy it once and we all got a copy of it to download on our devices, we could then play multiplayer across our different devices. And we would sit there for hours just playing like 5-player Minecraft together. The girls would be building him these big elaborate supermarkets that he would then want to shop in. So Lucy used to have to build him Tesco and put the Tesco sign over the top, and then he'd go in there and shop with her, and I'd be making these ridiculous massive roller coasters that he could then have a ride on. And you know, we'd all be doing our own thing in there, but then all interacting with what each of us were doing. And it was, even now, it's probably the only time all 5 of us have ever shared an interest to that level where we could just sit and just absorb ourselves in it for hours at a time and just have a massive amount of fun as a family of 5. Because everything else has always only interested a few of us, or there's been one person who wasn't that keen, but Minecraft was the thing. And it all stemmed, Andy started that. We were kind of aware of it, but weren't really playing it. We'd all had a little go and thought, well, there's not much to this. And it wasn't until we played it multiplayer with all of us involved that we realised the potential for awesome in there. And we have tried to go back and do it from time to time. I think some of the maps that we built are probably still saved on Lucy's iPad, because I think they all lived on there. But he's just not at all interested anymore. He's moved on. But for probably 3 or 4 months, that was a brilliant bonding thing for us all. And it was all due to his obsession with Minecraft. Does Andy ever get his obsessions from what other people around him do, such as copying and getting obsessed with what Anna or me do? Yeah, most of his technology obsessions have come exactly that way. I don't think there's any of the technology that Andy owns that we've bought for him before anyone else has had it. So there's nothing that we've just got for him because we think that he would like it. Everything that he's got is something that one of us has had before him, whether it's me or Anna or the girls, and he's shown an interest in it, and we've then got him one. So it goes all the way back to where it all began, which was with the iPod Touch that Anna had years ago. We're going back probably 7 or 8 years. Anna had an iPod Touch. Andy liked the look of it. He ended up using hers, so she got him one as well. And then it all kind of went on from there. So things that Andy only has because he's seen one of us use them and became interested, and then turned into obsession on it. We've got, starting with the iPod Touch, through the DS, which Anna had before Andy did, and Andy decided that he wanted one. The iPad, because I had an iPad when I first met them and Andy really liked the look of it. The PlayStation, because Anna had one and Andy decided he wanted one. The Vita, both me and Anna had and Andy decided he wanted. Cameras, he saw me with cameras and decided he wanted to be able to have cameras too. There's probably more, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. But yeah, just about all of his technology obsessions have come off the back of stuff that he's seen us doing and liked the look of. I was diagnosed with autism this year at the age of 20. Previously, I went undiagnosed because my obsessions and interests were wide and shallow rather than narrow and deep. I collect a lot of things and have a lot of hobbies that I switch between. Does Andy do this? He doesn't collect stuff. I mean, I guess actually that might not be true. He has a lot of Simpsons stuff that he just leaves in the box and used to stand on the back of his sofa and now piles in his corner. So I guess he's collecting in a way. But it's not he won't go out of his way to buy more Simpsons stuff. If we give him stuff, he'll put it with the other Simpsons stuff. The same with the In the Night Garden stuff that he's got. If we give him some more, he'll put it with the stuff that he's already got. But he doesn't go hunting for In the Night Garden stuff. So I don't know if you'd call it collecting. He does switch between interests though. At the moment, I don't remember the last time I saw him turn a PlayStation on. And previously, PlayStation was his biggest obsession. He used to use PlayStation more than his iPad. Burnout Paradise, which was the game he used to play every single day for months on end. The moment we went to the Premier Inn, he didn't play it that day because we were in the Premier Inn. He hasn't touched it since, and it's almost been replaced in his mind by an obsession about Premier Inn. That time he would have spent playing Burnout Paradise. He now spends watching videos about Premier Inns. So, yeah, he does rotate between his obsessions, but not very often. And he often goes back to them as well. So I fully expect he'll go back to PlayStation at some point. He's had long periods where he's not really been into his Vita and then went back to it. He has a laptop that he's used on occasions, but then sort of works his way back round to it every now and again. I'm still hopeful he'll go back to Minecraft at some point too. The whole wide and shallow rather than narrow and deep thing is interesting, and I think that's something that does need to be put out there as a message for everybody. You don't have to know absolutely everything about a topic for it to be an obsession. An obsession can be something that just controls your thoughts and your activities short term before you move on to something else and get obsessed with that. I'm probably a good example of that. I don't get really deeply obsessed with things, but the things that I'm interested in, I do obsess on. But they vary. They move around loads. If I look back over the last 5 or 6 years or so, I was obsessed with poker for a little while, but never became like super, super good at poker. But I read loads of books about it. I watched videos about it. I played it a lot. So I was really into that for a relatively short amount of time, probably only a year or so. Video games I've always drifted in and out of, like games consoles and stuff. Pokemon Go, I was massively into when it first came out. Haven't touched it for a year and a half. I'm now massively into it again, to the point where I've started playing old Pokemon games on my 3DS, which I've dusted out, and I'm watching videos about Pokemon. I'm reading about Pokemon. I'm obsessed with Pokemon again all of a sudden. And a lot of my interests go that way. Anna's even saying to me, let me know when you're done with this Pokemon thing, because she knows it won't last. I know it won't last, but at the moment I'm really, really, really interested in it. Wrestling's another one that I've just drifted in and out of over the years. Comic books I drift in and out of. I haven't touched a comic book in about 2 weeks. I know I'll be back to them, but at the moment I'd rather do Pokemon or I'd rather do wrestling. The only things that have really been solid obsessions that I go really, really deep on and become an expert on, I guess you would class YouTube as one of them, because that's been nearly 3 years now and I'm still learning all the time and still love everything about it. And Football Manager, but even that, I'm not a brilliant Football Manager player. I just really, really enjoy it and do it every day, and have done for like 25 years. But I'm not the best Football Manager player in the world, as anyone who watches my gaming channel will agree with. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be one thing that you're super, super mega obsessed on. It could be lots of little things that you have mini obsessions on for a certain amount of time before moving on, or you have a few things that you're obsessed with at the same time. Obsession comes in many forms. What obsession, when it can't be done, is the hardest for Andy to accept? I don't think there's a specific one that becomes really hard to accept if he can't do it. It's more to do with the circumstances around not being able to do it. If he's expecting to be able to do it and then can't, he finds that really difficult to cope with. So typical examples of that are when he's expecting to go and see a church, he gets there and it's locked. He finds that really difficult to cope with because he's got himself set up for wanting to go to that church. If we hadn't told him he was going to a church, or if he hadn't decided he wanted to go to a church that day, it wouldn't have been that much of an issue. His iPad, when he broke his old iPad last year, he basically went into total shutdown. He curled up into a ball, didn't speak, didn't move. We went out and I bought him a new one on my way home from work, but he was probably 3 or 4 hours of barely moving, barely talking, just in his bed, curled up in a ball, because he wasn't able to use his iPad and he just couldn't cope with it. So actually, forget that there's not one thing. That would be the one thing. Not being able to use his iPad is the worst possible scenario for Andy. He must have access to his iPad or he just cannot handle it at all. Lastly then, does Andy suffer from OCD? It's not diagnosed, but we have had discussions with doctors about it, and they've said, yeah, it's a common comorbid, so a common thing that goes alongside autism. It's very difficult to get a standalone OCD diagnosis when you've already had a diagnosis of autism and anxiety, because they're so intertwined with each other that it's really difficult to pick out, right, well, here's an example of OCD behaviour. Andy will always insist that all doors are completely shut. So if he walks through a door, it doesn't shut all the way, he'll go back and shut the door. If you push it open again, he'll go and shut it again. If it gets pushed open by the wind, he'll go and shut it immediately. But that's also something that someone with autism might do. It's also something that someone with anxiety might do. So it's really difficult to pin down that is an OCD behaviour rather than autism or an anxiety behaviour. So he has a lot of the signs of OCD. He's probably never going to have a diagnosis of OCD, but we kind of are working on the assumption that, yeah, he does have that as well, but it's not formally diagnosed. It probably never will be. And that's fine. It doesn't need to be. He's got enough overlapping diagnosis there already that we can, both us and other people can make accommodations for things like making sure doors shut all the way, for example. Right, we are going to leave things there on this video. As ever with videos in this series, we're probably only just scratching the surface on it. So if there's any questions you've got on this topic that I haven't answered, make sure you let me know what they are down in the comments, because we will absolutely at some point in the future go back through into a season 2 of all this where we revisit topics, maybe not as total standalone videos, but certainly go back and answer any questions that we missed on the topics that we've covered on this series. So let me know down in the comments if there's anything you'd like me to answer that I haven't. Likewise, if there's a topic that you'd like to see us do one of these deep dives on, something to do with autism and being a parent of somebody with autism that you'd like us to spend 20 minutes talking about, answering your questions on, let me know down in the comments what topics you'd like to see us cover. I think we're probably maybe a few weeks away from ending the first season of this series, purely because I think we're getting to that point where we are exhausting topics. I've maybe got 1 or 2 left that I can think of. So if we want to keep this going beyond then, we do need to have your input on what topics you'd like to see. Failing that, we'll probably just put a pin in it for a little while, leave it for 3 or 4 months, then come back and do that season 2 where we revisit all the topics with the previous questions. So let me know down in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to see us do. Don't panic that this video came out on a Friday either. It's fine. There's reasons. I'll probably explain them down in the comments. But we are going to leave things there. So if you have enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for us. Subscribe to the channel for the rest of this series, plus daily vlogs. And thank you very much for watching.